have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And hello, your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Victory Monday, April 20th.
Yay.
Your readers today are
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard. And Ted, we're going to start with the weather. And the good news is the rain has stopped for a few days.
Finally.
Yes. The forecast is for rather cloudy and cold today. It says a jacket may come in handy. The high will be 39. Mainly clear and cold tonight. The low temperature will be 28. Turning out cloudy tomorrow with a high of 53, so a bit warmer. Wednesday we'll get some sun with a high of 58. Thursday partly sunny with a high of 66. And Friday increasing cloudiness, and the rain may return at night. Our normal high and low temperatures for this date are 56 and 38 degrees. Our record high was 87 degrees in 2008, and our record low was 21 degrees in 1904. And for precipitation, listen to this. With all the rain we've had, our normal amount of rain to date would be just under 11 inches, and year to date, we've had almost 15 inches.
Wow.
So we're about 4 inches ahead of the normal amount of our rainfall. And the air quality index for today is said to be good.
All right. With all that cold weather, we can say that it certainly didn't cool down that saber fever that started yesterday. And that's right on our front page today. It says a cold snap wasn't keeping long-suffering Sabre fans away. Sabres fan Josh Money likes the way sports imitate life. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. For example, when Mooney joined hundreds, maybe thousands of fans for the Buffalo Sabres day-long outdoor playoff party on Sunday, it was 40 degrees, windy, and snowing. The previous afternoon was 78 degrees and sunny. But people waited 15 years for a party like this. The Sabres pregame in the Plaza was back for the first playoff game since 2011. It was like the wedding of a beloved couple who endured years of rough patches. No one was missing this party because of some mid-April snow, no matter how pesky. "What the hell is this? I can't read the rest on the radio," said a woman walking through the party as she flipped her palms over to catch the heavy flakes. This was the party of a fan base that is used to being cold. Buffalo is not a fair-weather city. These are people who are familiar with discomfort and disappointment. People in Buffalo make do with what they have. When what they have suddenly improves, they savor it. 3 hours before game time, the pregame in the Plaza already looked like the good old days. Liam Conroe, a 21-year-old fan from Jamestown, said he had seen footage online of what the playoff parties used to be like. Those YouTube videos show screaming fans, booming music, a sea of Sabres jerseys, makeshift Stanley Cups. The magic was back. Snippets of overheard party conversation sounded hopeful. "I think we have a good shot as anybody else this year," said one fan. As workers struggled to anchor their pop-up tents in the wind, those tents developed long, snaking lines. Fans wanted airbrush Sabres tattoos. They wanted to score a goal at a blow-up goalie. "I'm a fan, not a player," said one fan after missing a few attempts. They figured they'd spin a wheel to see if they could win free things. Fans like Courtney Alvarez and her family posed in front of a round one game sign flanked by balloons. Alvarez started going to Sabres games when her season ticket holding parents. Now she brings her 6-year-old daughter, Alana, and a 4-year-old son, Sam. Alana made a sign for her favorite player, whose name she proudly and correctly pronounces Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. And Sam Sign informed the crowd that Sunday also happened to be his 4th birthday. We've been waiting so long. Last time we were in the playoffs, I was in middle school and high school, Alvarez said. It's going to be incredible inside that building today. Mooney moved through the pregame in the plaza with his eyes on the crowd. He was euphoric. He was about to spend the evening in the KeyBank Center with 19,000 of his favorite people in the world. He thinks the Sabres' run could be one of the greatest stories in sports. A similar sentiment was overheard earlier in the day in the Buffalo AKG lobby when a woman said, "There are going to be movies about this, I bet." "I'm excited for everybody as a group to experience this together," Mooney said. "I love being around all the people in Buffalo. We have a shared life. Getting to come and be a group and rally behind a team means so much to me." Mooney, who's 28, fell in love with the Sabres as a kid. That was a team that made the playoffs often. But as an adult, Mooney chooses to spend his free time and money with the Sabres. He has season tickets and frequently makes the hour-long drive after work from his Rochester home to Buffalo for the games. He listens to the Sabres podcasts. It's something he does with his boyfriend and brother. It's the easiest way to connect out in the public, Mooney said. If you know what's going on with the team and what's happening in life here, people want to talk to you about it. Janine Hebler became a Sabres fan at 6 years old. It was 1970 and the team's first year. She chose her jersey, Gilbert Perreault, based on the team's and the player's exotic-sounding name. Never mind that he was the first overall draft pick, she said. Nearly all of Hebler's life has unfolded since becoming a Sabres fan, but her fandom never wavered. She left North Tonawanda for Sarasota, Florida 40 years ago and has endured abuse from her Tampa supporting community. She spent the last few years on a mission to see the Sabres play at every arena in the league, and she even went to Prague.
Now there's a dedicated fan.
Yes.
Staying on the front page of today's Buffalo News, our next story is headlined, "Western New York lawmakers want Albany to relax environmental review process." Now, this story has an acronym called SECRA, and SECRA stands for the State Environmental Quality Review Act. Amherst Town Supervisor Sean Lavin said it was pricing people out of the state. North Tonawanda Mayor Austin Tylick said it caused unnecessary delays that hurt taxpayers. Village of Fredonia Mayor Michael Ferguson said it kept his community from obtaining water. They were talking about New York State's Environmental Quality Review Act, or SECRA, a law Governor Hugh Carey signed in 1975. On Thursday, the elected officials visited the state capitol to support Governor Kathy Hochul's plan to relax the law. The governor proposed SECRA reform in her $263 billion budget, saying it would eliminate red tape and unnecessary holdups she contends have delayed projects to construct new housing, child care facilities, and community projects. This is an affordability issue. The more you up the supply, the demand lowers and costs go down, Lavin told reporters. That's where we need to get to in this state. We're losing people because we can't afford it. SECRA reform needs to happen, and it needs to happen immediately to allow people to live and grow wealth in this state. The proposal is one of a handful of policy issues dividing Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie of the Bronx, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins of Yonkers as they continue to negotiate a state budget that was due on April 1st. While the legislative leaders said they have made progress in the negotiations, they noted concerns of relaxing environmental standards. Tylik said he and other officials support expediting projects without impacting the environment or residents' lives. He said the city has received tens of millions of dollars in state and federal grants for private and public projects, but that SECRA-related delays have hurt the taxpayers. Due to SECRA, he said, a public project for a bike path to connect two parks along a residential stretch was delayed 3 years. He said the price of the bike path ended up with increased costs of $1 million. Tylik said a proposed subdivision for some 80 patio homes prompted a 5-year lawsuit that eventually was dismissed. Tylik said each year a project is delayed, the costs increase by at least 10%. These are all things that we need to be looking at on a local level. We're the ones that are calling the state, our officials, our partners in government saying, hey, we need to cut this red tape. We need to build. We need to do what the governor is looking to do, increase density and expand New York State as a whole, Tylik said. Ferguson, joined by the village's deputy mayor, John Esperson, said a SECRA-related lawsuit sidetracked his village's plan to receive federal money for a water plant, which is needed for a hospital under construction, as well as the university at Fredonia. We've got tremendous growth in the community, but it's being stymied by outdated and just redundant laws that cost not only our developers money, but also our residents money and time, he said. The municipal leaders, joined by Ithaca Mayor Robert Cantelmo, appeared in the Capitol on a day when lawmakers passed their fourth extender bill to continue funding state operations while the late budget continues to be negotiated. Hochul has SECRA is the cause of delays, higher costs, and lack of housing in areas across the state, including the city of Buffalo. Under her proposed changes, projects where environmental concerns are already being addressed could go forward without SECRA. Exempted projects would still need to face state regulatory and permit requirements for water use, air quality, and protection of natural resources, and could not supersede zoning and state and local requirements. You have the whole checklist of everything that has to be done to get approvals, Hochul said Tuesday during an appearance in Troy. And then you have a 50-year-old law in the state of New York known as SECRA, which at the time was necessary. But since 1975, many other laws have been supervising or intervening that now make that unnecessary in many of these housing projects. Hochul added, we're not eliminating local review, we're not saying anything goes, we're just saying let's inject some common sense into this. Roger Downs, Conservation Director for the Sierra Club's Atlantic chapter, testified at a legislative hearing in January that Hochul's proposal was too broad and could be exploited by developers seeking to cut corners. On Thursday, Heastie told reporters that while everyone wants to see more housing built, they do not want to, quote, just get rid of environmental checks, unquote. He said the leaders were starting to see common ground. On Wednesday, Stuart Cousins said the different sides were getting closer to consensus. My conference has always been clear that we want to protect the environment, but we also don't want to create obstacles that make it impossible to move forward with the projects that would be helpful and that the community wants, she said. I think we're pretty close on that, making sure that the environmental protections are there and that there is at least a reasonable amount of time where one will be able to get through a review process. The Senate's budget plan that Stuart Cousins unveiled in March included SECRA reform that would allow SECRA to be exempt, particularly in urban areas, under the condition that the project underwent minimum environmental and infrastructure standards and scaled the size of the project to the community context. Senator April Baskin, Democrat of Buffalo, lauded the Western New York municipal leaders for their efforts to push for SECRA reform, but she did not say whether she supported the government's proposal. It's clear that Democrats in the New York State legislature are committed to making more affordable housing and development more accessible across the state, Baskin said in a statement. We are actively in negotiations to determine which policies will best achieve those goals. Assembly member Karen McMahon, Democrat of Williamsville, through a spokesperson, declined to comment on the proposal, saying it was under active negotiation.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time is 15 minutes after the hour. And now we turn to the opinion section, and we'll start with the editorial by the Buffalo News staff. And the headline is, "New Rules as County Legislators Are Right to Place Strict Guidelines on Bill's Luxury Suite Use." Once again, the topic is luxury suites. But this time, the focus isn't on politicians and their friends who enjoyed watching Bills games while snacking on pizza, wings, beef on weck, and other finger foods, mostly at taxpayer expense, from the comfort of Highmark Stadium's luxury suite. That was the old Bills Stadium. The luxury suite in the new venue, this time run by Erie County, will not be a perk for politicians and lobbyists, thanks to a set of extensive criteria and policy proposed through a collaborative effort of former and current county legislators and the county executive. Erie County's hospitality suite was granted to the county in exchange for the county's contribution of $250 million toward the construction of the new Highmark Stadium. But during the agreement process for its use, the suite had early gatekeepers. Former county legislature chairperson April Baskin and her successor, legislator Tisha St. Jean Tard, pushed for policy to ensure the suite is used primarily for the benefit of the public. As reported by the News' Sandra Tan, St. Jean Tard researched and drafted her own proposed policy, much of which she said was incorporated into the final agreement. The collaborative effort also included County Executive Mark Poloncarz, County Attorney Jeremy Roth, members of the University at Buffalo Sports Law Clinic, and others. St. Jean Tard, stressing transparency, said, "The suite is the people's suite. You will not see me in that suite. This is all about making sure that our nonprofits, which we have a lot of in the county, are able to go to the Bills game and are able to use this suite. That's the way it should be." And it's a big change from the way the state's luxury suite at the former Bills Stadium was operated. As reported by the News' Stephen T. Watson, Robert Gavin, and Michael Petro, the suite often hosted a political star-studded guest that included Governor Kathy Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, registered lobbyist and former Amherst Supervisor Brian J. Kulpa, among others. The argument that economic development was being discussed has been made. Is it probable? Taxpayers might be skeptical. The new luxury suites policy correctly forbids the suite from being used for political purposes or events. It bars county officials from attending any regular season and postseason games for free. It also establishes a lottery system distributing all game day tickets to qualifying charitable organizations. Erie County did not have a luxury suite in the former stadium, now being prepared for demolition, so this is new ground. The policy will be referred to a county legislature committee for further review, a process already begun to some extent by County Legislator Lindsay Larigo. Larigo noted that the current policy does not require anyone to keep a list of who attends games in the suite or offer any review process over applications. She also suggested that the lottery application process is not transparent. Larigo's offers legitimate criticism that should be taken into consideration. A policy that aims at transparency should be examined from all sides. In the meantime, Poloncarz and St. Jean Tard have right ideas. This is just the first year for the policy, which can always be revisited and changed as necessary. Just make sure it remains the people's suite.
Well, staying on the editorial page, we have the Another Voice column, and today the topic is reform, and the writer is Jenny Curry, who is Vice President of Buffalo Niagara National Action Network and a local small business owner. Her headline is Albany Must Address High Auto Insurance Rates, and she writes, Buffalo is facing a fiscal emergency. With a projected $109 million budget gap and a 25% property tax on the table, our city is being forced into difficult choices that will directly threaten affordability and the delivery of essential services. While local leaders weigh every possible tool from sales tax sharing to intergovernmental aid to close this gap, the reality is that municipal governments have limited options to address rising structural costs without further burdening already strained taxpayers. This is why the New York State Legislature must include Governor Kathy Hochul's auto insurance reform plan in this year's final state budget. New York's no-fault auto insurance system is among the most expensive in the nation. Our drivers pay thousands more annually than the national average, with premiums often exceeding $4,000. These astronomical costs are driven largely by fraud, excessive litigation, and liability rules. Municipalities across the state are being crushed by rising insurance and liability costs. Large local governments collectively spend over $2 billion every year on insurance and legal judgments, funds that should be supporting core public services. In 2024 alone, 23 municipalities were found to be in fiscal stress. Expert analysis suggests that just 5% reduction in claims could generate up to $100 million statewide. For Western New York agencies like the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authority, these savings are vital to maintaining reliable service and preventing fare increases. This is also a matter of regional fairness. Upstate communities often bear the financial burden of a system shaped by downstate dynamics while relying on transit systems that have very little financial flexibility. Insurance reform is a necessary step to address the systemic cost drivers that have brought us to this point. By curbing fraud and modernizing legal standards, the state can ease pressure on local governments and lower the cost for residents. At a time when local leaders are facing impossible trade-offs and potential tax hikes, Albany must act on the root causes of these rising costs. The legislature must include these comprehensive reforms in this year's budget.
And today's editorial cartoon comes to us from Mike Lukovich of the Creators Syndicate. And it's a rather simple image here. There's a large brown table with papers in front of 6 men. And on one side, there are 3 men, very glum looking with turbans. And in front of them is a flag of Iran. And on the other side are 3 gentlemen with papers in front of them, and they have the flag of the United States there. So they're obviously in some kind of negotiation meeting here. And one of the Americans speaks up with the only thing that's said on this page. And he's saying to the Iranians here, we all agree he's nuts. Now let's see if we can build on that. That's it.
Well, next we'll turn to the political columns, and the first one we have is from Carl P. Lubsdorf, and he writes for the Dallas Morning News, and the headline on his column today is, Trump's war against Iran has been just a large-scale disaster. He writes, however and whenever President Trump's war against Iran ultimately ends, this much is already clear. It's been a disaster for the president, the United States, and the global economy. Despite victory claims from some top U.S. officials and the substantial damage from American bombing, Iran's fundamentalist regime remains in charge, its stockpile of nuclear materials presumably mostly intact, its ability to wreak havoc at least partially so. The failure of the recent talks in Pakistan means the conflict will persist indefinitely, increasing the damage to all. Meanwhile, Trump's erratic behavior has shaken the Western alliance to the core, and his decision to blockade the Straits of Hormuz can only exacerbate the damage to the global economy that began with Iran's decision to restrict oil exports. Unsurprisingly, the administration would have you believe differently. The recent ceasefire had no sooner taken effect than U.S. officials led by Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth started to declare victory. But notably, they limited their claims to the narrow issue of military victory as opposed to overall success. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield, a capital V military victory by any measure, Hegseth said. Together with our Israeli partners, America's military achieved every single objective. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also hailed the, quote, capital V military victory. To be sure, weeks of incessant U.S. bombing destroyed Iran's navy and overwhelmingly damaged its other military forces and industrial infrastructure. But Iran apparently retains enough operative missile launchers to remain a threat to America's Persian Gulf allies, plus Israel. More importantly, despite weeks of bombing in the earlier assault, which Trump claimed obliterated its nuclear weapons, analysts say Iran retains enough fissionable material to rebuild its nuclear weapons capacity over time. And though Trump claims he has achieved regime change by displacing Iran's Ayatollah with his son and allegedly more moderate elements, that is almost certainly untrue. In fact, Israeli analysts say Iran's new leaders are even more hardline than their predecessors. The result has been neither the unconditional surrender Trump demanded nor the resounding Iranian defeat he has repeatedly claimed. The Iranians flatly rejected Vice President Vance's demand that they scrap all nuclear materials. Indeed, they enjoy increased leverage from their willingness to block the Strait of Hormuz and demand toll payments in cryptocurrency. Their slowdown in shipments and Trump's subsequent embargo may only slightly affect oil and gas availability in the United States, but their limits on global supplies has caused oil prices everywhere to skyrocket and ensured that U.S. gas prices would stay high. Along with the president's often haphazard application of increased tariffs, they will also likely ensure a second year of lagging economic growth and prevent the reduction in inflation that would have allowed a cut in interest rates. In fact, recently updated figures for the first year of Trump's second term show annual growth was the lowest since the 2020 COVID pandemic, and the inflation rate has turned upward again after several years of decline. Trump's tactics have increased these concerns in 6 weeks since Trump, apparently spurred by Israeli Premier Benjamin Netanyahu, made the fateful decision to do militarily what prior presidents sought to do through diplomacy. And not only has his effort failed, but it has weakened his presidency, his country, its alliances, and the global economy.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 29 minutes after the hour. And our next opinion piece comes to us from Lionel Lauret of the Bloomberg Opinion Group. The headline is, Putin's mouse is gone, and that's terrible news for MAGA. Hungary's Viktor Orbán pulled almost every lever available to extend his 16 years in power. In the end, neither an in-person endorsement from Vice President Vance nor a captive media machine was enough to save the man who admits playing quote-unquote mouse to Vladimir Putin's quote-unquote lion. While more of a tilt back westward for the country rather than a radical new path, this election result is a warning for the European Union's MAGA fan club. Ideally, it will help the bloc become more credible and competitive. Orbán's legal defeat shows the rise of, quote, illiberal democracy, end quote, that is not inevitable. The crowded celebrations along the Danube and the record voter turnout speak to a disconnection between the Hungary he claimed to defend and the people's lived experience. The beaten party had lauded public sector wage hikes and shiny factories like the one built by a Chinese battery maker. Voters, however, felt ground down by weak growth, post-pandemic inflation, and low salaries. The crony capitalism of Orbán's network of associates painted a picture of corruption and caused Brussels to withhold billions of euros in support. The perky response of Hungary's currency and equity markets at a time when war in the Gulf is depressing asset prices everywhere shows Orbánism clearly wasn't working for business. It helps that incoming Prime Minister Peter Magyar's supermajority will give him the power to change things. Brussels offers the lowest hanging fruit. Hungarians lost trust in Orbán and want a different approach on EU relations rather than the tired attacks on the populist favorite scapegoat. If Magyar lifts Hungary's bloc on a 900 billion euro, which would be $150 billion, loan to Ukraine and on Russian sanctions, it will be a step toward unlocking the 17 billion euros in European funds earmarked for the country. The noises are already positive. It would, of course, be foolish to expect miracles from Magyar, who is more political insider than radical progressive. He's taken a carefully constructed position on Ukraine, supporting its right to self-defense while ruling out sending Hungarian weapons or troops. His most pressing challenge is a budget deficit drifting above 5%. And despite Magyar's ambition to dismantle Orbánism brick by brick, the ousted leader's influence won't disappear overnight, and neither will Putin's. Hungary is highly dependent on Russia for energy, and Chatham House's Gregoire Ross says it would take years of investment in alternatives to change that. And yet, losing a perennial troublemaker and veto wielder from the EU top table will help it pursue a more credible geopolitical path between President Trump's Moscow-friendly White House and China's industrial juggernaut. Brussels diplomats will expect more support at the margins for Kiev after regularly grumbling about Orbán as Putin's Trojan horse. There's hope for a spring cleaning in Budapest for the rule of law, too. Magyar is promising to clean house by tackling corruption and restoring the judiciary's independence, including joining the European Public Prosecutor's Office. The European Commission should give him a leg up when evaluating the rule of law milestones in return for access to Brussels cash. And without giving into wishful thinking or the domino theory about MAGA's fellow travelers in the old continent, Orbán's fall will further energize politicians taking the fight to Trump's network of friends and imitators. The U.S. president is becoming ever more unpopular because of his arrogant bullying of Europe, as well as his reckless and economically damaging war of choice in the Gulf. Handing the keys of power to wannabe authoritarians is starting to look deeply unwise. Defenders of the liberal democratic faith must now maintain momentum elsewhere. Bulgaria is headed into its 8th parliamentary election in 5 years. France is bracing for Emmanuel Macron's last full year as president before elections that might yet bring the far right to power. Hungary is relatively small in terms of population and gross domestic product, but its geopolitical importance resonates 70 years on from the 1956 uprising that was crushed by the Soviet Union's tanks. While it's too early to declare this a definitive turning point, it is an opportunity that Europe simply cannot waste.
Well, turning now to some Washington news, the headline is Looser Standards Are Feared with the FBI and the Department of Justice looking to bolster ranks. The FBI and the Justice Department are scrambling to rebuild a depleted workforce with leaders easing hiring requirements and accelerating recruitment in ways that some current and former officials see as a lowering of accepted standards. The FBI has used social media to attract applicants, offered abbreviated training for candidates from other federal agencies, and relaxed requirements for support staff seeking to become agents, according to people familiar with the changes and internal communications seen by the Associated Press. At the same time, the Justice Department has opened the door to hiring prosecutors right out of law school for vacancies in U.S. attorney offices across the country. Some current and former agents also say the FBI is promoting into positions of leadership employees with less experience than would be customary for the jobs. The moves reflect a broader effort to stabilize a workforce strained by retirements and resignations, prompted in part by concerns over the Trump administration's politicization of the department, along with the firing of lawyers, agents, and other employees deemed insufficiently loyal to the president's agenda. It's a sign of, among other things, the difficulty the department is having right now in keeping and recruiting people, said Greg Brower, a former U.S. attorney in Nevada, who left the FBI in 2018 as its chief congressional liaison. The FBI defended the changes as a necessary modernization of its hiring pipeline, saying it is streamlining standards and removing what it says were bureaucratic steps in the application process. The Justice Department, meanwhile, has lowered hiring prerequisites for some federal prosecutors. Department officials recently suspended a policy that U.S. attorneys hire only prosecutors with at least 1 year of experience practicing law. The department did not explain the reason. It comes as parts of the agency are struggling to keep up with the workload among a critical staffing shortage, with the department recently acknowledging that it has lost nearly 1,000 assistant U.S. attorneys. The number of lawyers in the criminal division's violent crime and racketeering section, which prosecutes organized crime groups and violent gangs, is down significantly, though the section is looking to hire additional lawyers. The department said in a statement that it has seen an increase in criminal complaints and indictments despite a loss of its prosecutors, underscoring the, quote, bloated, ineffective, and weaponized, unquote, institution it says the administration inherited.
In national news, we have this headline, Jet fuel costs amid the war leaves some travelers worried. As the U.S. and Israel's war with Iran squeezes global oil supplies, travelers have valid reasons to worry about the cost and availability of flights as they plan their late spring and summer trips. The head of the International Energy Agency has warned that European countries could run low on jet fuel within weeks, forcing the continent's airlines and carriers that fly to Europe to significantly reduce flights. Many airlines have already raised checked bag fees or added fuel surcharges as the global price of jet fuel increased from about $99 per barrel at the end of February to as high as $209 a barrel at the beginning of April. In a sign of the conflict's ongoing repercussions for travel, Air Canada said on Friday that it planned to suspend its service to New York's JFK International Airport from June 1st until October 25th to lower its fuel costs. Other airlines, including United, Delta, and the U.S. and Air France KLM and Cathay Pacific in Europe and Asia, have reduced routes and either increased ticket prices or said they would hike them if the war keeps oil from passing through the Strait of Hormuz. While consumers may be tempted to see if the war ends before buying airline tickets, the wait-and-see approach to booking flights is riskier this year, travel experts say, especially the longer the war goes on and the closer to summer and the peak periods get. My advice to travelers is this: if you can find a flight whose schedule fits yours, with a fare you can afford, and on an airline you can at least tolerate, book it, Hartevelt said. But I cannot emphasize this enough. Do not book a basic economy fare, the cheapest but also the most restrictive airplane ticket. Paying upfront for a refundable ticket may also prove advantageous, because if the prices start to change dramatically, you can cancel and rebook at a better price, Gilead said.
Well, as we look towards America's 250th anniversary this year, here's a headline: Patriots of color are feted with the U.S. set to celebrate. Charlie Price says he didn't learn much about the American Revolution in school. He knew about George Washington, the Battle of Bunker Hill, and that the Patriots won. It wasn't until he joined the Lexington Minutemen, a group of Revolutionary War reenactors, that he realized there's so much more to the story. The Lexington Minutemen marked the anniversary of the Battle of Lexington in Massachusetts on Saturday, as they do every year. Thousands of people, some in colonial costumes, gathered on the Lexington Green to witness the historic clash. The battle, which marked the start of the American Revolution 251 years ago, ended with 8 Americans killed and 10 wounded. Among the soldiers represented there was Prince Estabrook, an enslaved man who joined his white neighbors on Lexington Green in April 19, 1775, as British troops approached. He was wounded that day, but served in multiple deployments throughout the war. I wasn't surprised that we didn't know about it, said Price. Get this, a 95-year-old Black Korean War veteran who played the role of Estabrook for 50 years. I was surprised that there was one black soldier out here. As America prepares to celebrate its 250th anniversary, Estabrook and other patriots of color are being celebrated through programs nationwide that aim to tell a more complete story of the birth of the nation. Museum and exhibits and documentary films and lectures have traditionally focused on the white leaders of the American Revolution, such as Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and Paul Revere. Christopher Brown, a British Empire historian at Columbia University, said the Revolution has long been portrayed as simply a story and a moral story that celebrates America's origins and looks to the past as kind of an idealized version of what the present is. There were black men who were fighting in Concord and Lexington and fought on Bunker Hill, he said. They knew all of the work that women were doing to support the revolutionary effort. The fact that we didn't know more is a sign of our lack of curiosity and the need for greater research. The National Park Service estimates that by the end of the Revolution, more than 5,500 patriots of color, including black and indigenous people, served on the colonial side, while many were runaway slaves who fought for the British.
And in world news, Leo prays at shrine in Angola that was key in slave trade. Pope Leo XIV on Sunday recalled the sorrow and great suffering Angolans suffered and endured for centuries as the American Pope prayed at a Catholic shrine located at the site of an important hub of the African slave trade during Portugal's colonial rule. Leo, whose ancestors include enslaved people and slave owners, prayed the rosary at the sanctuary, a simple whitewashed church with blue trim and a statue of the Madonna inside. Speaking in Portuguese, he recalled it was here where for centuries many men and women have prayed in times of joy and also in moments of sorrow and the great suffering in the history of this country. According to genealogical research published by Henry Louis Gates Jr., 17 of Leo's American ancestors were black, listed in census records as mulatto, black, Creole, or free person of color. His family tree includes slaveholders and enslaved people, Gates wrote in the New York Times. Gates, who is a Harvard University professor, hosts the PBS documentary series Finding Your Roots, and he presented his research to Leo during a July 5th audience at the Vatican. According to a report of their meeting in the Harvard Gazette, the Pope asked about ancestors, both black and white, who were enslavers. Leo has not spoken publicly about his family heritage or the genealogical research, and some black Catholic scholars were hesitant to impose on him a narrative about his identity that he himself has not yet addressed. It's important that we tell our own stories, said Tia Noel Pratt, a sociologist of religion and professor at Villanova University, the Pope's alma mater. We haven't heard anything from him about what he thinks about it, and so to impose anything on him, I think, would be completely inappropriate, said Pratt, who's the author of Faithful and Devoted, Racism and Identity in the African American Catholic Experience.
Well, here's something new, or maybe it's old and new. The mall is cool again. More Gen Z shoppers are looking for in-person stores for experiences. The 80s are calling, and it's not to Generation X. Shopping malls, the mainstay of teens in the 1980s and 1990s, are enjoying a resurgence thanks to Generation Z shoppers who crave in-person social outlets. Annabelle Sacco, 24, of Bloomfield, Michigan, does a combination of shopping online and at the mall, and she's seen an increase of shoppers her age in those spaces. The mall is an experience, Sacco said. You go there and you see all different kinds of people, and it's just getting out of your isolation in your home. Going to the mall also satisfies the need to get something right away and reduces the amount of time returning online purchases, she said. Her size often varies depending on the brand, she said, so going to the mall and trying on clothes makes it easier to find the right fit. Shoppers like Sacco are the reason why mall traffic is on the rise. According to Placer AI, which uses tens of millions of devices and machine learning to estimate in-store visits across the United States, traffic to indoor malls was up 4.5% in January and February from the previous year. The resurgence of the mall category directly correlates with Gen Z shoppers' desire for community and an in-person connection, said Elizabeth LaFontaine, Director of Research at Placer AI. Mall-based retailers and brands harness social media to connect directly with Gen Z audiences, LaFontaine said, both physically in stores and digitally, as younger shoppers use social media for tips and trend research. Shoppers between the ages of 18 and 24 bought 62% of their total general merchandise in stores last year, according to market research company Syncara.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need any further information on these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Again, 716-821-5555. We have no death listings today, but we have 3 obituaries. The first is Oscar Schmidt, the Basketball Hall of Famer, known to his Brazilian compatriots as the Holy Hand, died on Friday. He was 68 years old. Garrett Anderson, the multi-talented outfielder who became the Los Angeles Angels career hits leader and led the team to its only World Series title, died. He was 53. And finally, Natalie Bay, a French actor who was a fan's favorite for her down-to-earth charm and great versatility, has died. She was 77. If you need any further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Again, 716-821-5555.
Well, now it's time for Georgia Nichols Royal Stars, and if today is your birthday, and today is the birthday for my daughter-in-law, Mary Lou,
all right,
happy birthday to her down in Texas. You are an ambitious perfectionist who is organized, tenacious, and energetic. And that organized, tenacious, and energetic part describes her perfectly. This is a year of learning and teaching for you. Take time to renew your spiritual or religious beliefs. Now, the stars show what kind of a day you're going to have. A 5-star day is dynamic, a 4-star day is positive, 3 stars is average, 2 is so-so, and 1 is difficult. Fortunately, we don't have anybody with 2 or 1-star days today. We'll start with Aries, who is having a 4-star day. You are action-oriented sign who likes to move fast. Therefore, be careful today, because you might have clever ideas and long-range plans that excite you. Tonight, conversations. For us Taurians, it is a tricky day. We have a 3-star day. You are the financial wizard of the zodiac. And in parentheses, it says, we both know this. Tonight, check your belongings. For Gemini, 4 stars. Today, the moon is in your sign, making you more emotional than usual. It will also bring you extra good luck. And tonight, you're strong. For Cancer, 3 stars. It's a great day to schmooze. It's also an excellent day for discussions with people who might have advice for you. And tonight, you should enjoy privacy. For Leo, it's a 4-star day. You look good to everyone. Please note there's a moon alert all day, which means it's a poor day for decisions, and again in parentheses, and shopping, except for food and gas. I guess you don't want to buy any clothes today. Tonight, be friendly. For Virgo, 3 stars. It's important to know there's a moon alert all day today, which means it's a poor day, again, to shop. Don't buy except for food and gas, or make important decisions. Tonight, you're noticed. For Libra, 4 stars. It's an excellent day to explore new places and meet new faces. It's also an interesting day to get tips and advice from others. However, do not act or commit. Tonight, you should explore. For Scorpio, 4 stars. Remember that you will need more sleep this week. Meanwhile, again, there's a moon alert all day, which in this case means to avoid commitments and important decisions as well as shopping. Again, it's okay to buy food and gas. Tonight, check your finances. Sagittarius, 3 stars. This is a fantastic day for artists and creative people. Your mind will be free to roam through imaginative ideas. Tonight, the word is cooperate. For Capricorn, 3 stars. This could be a busy day due to family discussions, home repairs, plus anything to do with the arts, sports events, and children. Tonight, though, you should work. For Aquarius, 4 stars. You're in a playful mood today, which is just fine because this is an excellent day to schmooze with others. Tonight, you should play. And finally, for Pisces, it's a 3-star day. This is a fast-paced day. However, you will welcome a chance to lie low at home or at least take a rest. And tonight, you should relax at home.
And now it's time to take a look back to see what happened on April 20th throughout history. In 1812, the 4th Vice President of the United States, George Clinton, died in Washington at the age of 72, becoming the first Vice President to die while in office. In 1912, Boston's Fenway Park, now the oldest active stadium in Major League Baseball, hosted its first official baseball game with an estimated 27,000 spectators. The Red Sox defeated the New York Highlanders 7-6 in 11 innings. In 1914, private militia and Colorado National Guard members opened fire on an encampment of striking coal miners and their families in Ludlow, Colorado. At least 19 people in the camp, including 12 children and 1 guard member, were killed in what became known as the Ludlow Massacre. In 1972, Apollo 16's lunar module carrying astronauts John W. Young and Charles M. Duke Jr. landed on the moon. In 1999, 2 students shot and killed 12 classmates and 1 teacher and injured 23 others before taking their own lives at Columbine High School near Denver, Colorado. And finally, in 2010, an explosion on the Deepwater Horizon oil platform leased by BP killed 11 workers and caused a blowout that began spewing an estimated 200 million gallons of crude oil into the Gulf of Mexico in one of the largest environmental disasters in U.S. history. The well was finally capped nearly 3 months later.
Well, a moment ago when we read the horoscopes, we said that for several star signs, it was okay. You could go buy gas today, and that was a safe thing to do. But if you look at prices, it may not be a very good experience because Energy Secretary Chris Wright said on Sunday he believes gas prices have peaked, but predicted they may stay above $3 per gallon until next year. Gas prices have risen during the U.S. and Israeli war in Iran on February 28th and Iranian attacks on nearby countries. Gas below $3 a gallon could happen later this year, but that might not happen until next year, he said. But prices have already peaked and they'll likely start going down, he told CNN's State of the Union program. Certainly, with the resolution of this conflict, you'll see prices go down. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent last week predicted gas prices would fall to the $3 per gallon range this summer. Trump himself has said that gas prices may remain elevated until November. All of them have said gas will get cheaper once the Iran war ends. The average price for a gallon of regular gas on Sunday was $4.05, according to the AAA.
By the way, I have to stop and get gas after we get done with the broadcast.
Well, I saw it came down at my corner gas station from $4.19 a gallon all the way to $4.17.
Oh, I'm going to find that one. You are listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News for Monday, April 20th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for some more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
And we will continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. And your readers today are
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki. And we turn now to local and city news. And first headline is, New Buffalo Police Commissioner hopes to build inroads with officers and the community. When Erica Shields started work as a police officer in Atlanta in 1995, she never dreamed that she would one day run the department. Now, after another stop in Louisville, she is poised to be the first woman and openly gay person to lead the Buffalo Police Department after being selected by Mayor Sean Ryan. It will be her third post as the top cop, and if she is confirmed by the Common Council. The road to this point has not always been easy. Shields resigned from her Atlanta post after an officer shot and killed Rayshard Brooks amid an incident where Brooks had stolen an officer's taser and discharged it in the direction of the police as he was fleeing. The incident happened amid the COVID-19 pandemic and new calls for police reform in the wake of the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. She also resigned at the request of the new mayor in Louisville, a common practice when a new administration takes over. In Atlanta, where she stepped down the day after Brooks was killed, she said the writing was already on the wall, as she and then Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms had very different ideas about how the department should be run. At that point, I realized that we were really diverging in how we were going to run the department, and it became obvious that I needed to step down, Shields said. And it was important for me that the department and the community not get further embroiled in what was occurring. Then, in the midst of another crisis, she was brought to Louisville. Within months of continuous protest over the police killing of Breonna Taylor, Shields was hired to try to mend the relationship with the community and refocus a police force that was checked out, as she put it, with many officers refusing to do their work in the face of the new scrutiny and criticism. But both those positions and the difficult experiences that she has faced dealing with major crises have prepared her to take the reins at New York State's second largest police agency, she said in an interview with the Buffalo News. And, she said, she feels as though there is a real opportunity to build off a strong base, but still make improvements, a perspective she says she shares with Ryan. I think it's like all big cities. They all have challenges, Shields says, but I felt as though the city was strong and the department here is strong. Shields is originally from a small town near Oneonta in central New York. She said that part of the reason she wants the Buffalo job is in order to be closer to home. And Shields said going to Louisville helped her prepare for Buffalo, and that the two cities are very similar. Louisville is a smaller and more tight-knit community than Atlanta, one of the fastest growing metro areas in the country. Additionally, the Louisville department has a strong union, as Buffalo does. Atlanta also has an officers' union, but Georgia law prevents collective bargaining, one of the most powerful tools in negotiations for organized labor. I did have a learning curve, how to navigate this and fully understand the implications that a signed bargaining agreement could have in the operational decisions in the management of the Louisville Police Department, Shields said. That will be the same in Buffalo. But Shields said she views the relationship with the union as an opportunity. The union and the administration have the same goal, to create a safe and positive working environment for officers. They need to work together to figure out how to achieve that in a way that works for all the stakeholders, including the community. I've always been appreciative of union leadership, because I don't look at it as us versus them any more than I look at it the way with the community, Shields said. I think it's an essential part of the police DNA. They have their role, and I need to respect it. Now, Shields will have the task of trying to gain the trust of both police officers and the community as an outsider. If appointed, she will be the first commissioner to come from outside the Buffalo Police Department ranks since Gil Kerlikowske was hired by former Mayor Anthony Masiello in 1994. She was brought in after a national search, with a top police leadership recruitment firm leading the process. She will make $250,000 a year, a $75,000 per year jump over previous commissioners. Ryan has made attracting outside talent for leadership positions a priority and has said, for this position and others, Buffalo's pay scale would not allow them to achieve that goal. Shields says she hopes to win the trust of the department by demonstrating that she supports the rank and file, especially in an environment where their decisions in the field are being scrutinized and second-guessed more than ever.
Well, staying with police news, a retired detective's testimony reveals holes in the investigation of the 1993 Mindel homicide. Going into Brian Scott Lorenz's second retrial in the 1993 slaying of Deborah Mindel, his defense attorneys were eager to probe what they saw as obvious failings in the City of Tonawanda Police Department's investigation. Since the trial began earlier this month, jurors have heard all about what investigators did and didn't do to find out who killed the 33-year-old mother of two 33 years ago. That includes testimony from retired City of Tonawanda Police Detective David F. Bentley, one of the key witnesses in the case who recently took the stand for 2 full days. Defense attorneys have previously asserted Bentley, now 78, improperly influenced the testimony of at least 3 witnesses in the original trial more than 3 decades ago. Large parts of Bentley's latest testimony dealt with 2 other major figures in the case, Nancy Hummingbird, a now deceased witness who testified during the original 1994 trial that Lorenz had confessed, and Donald Mindel, Deborah's husband. Bentley's testimony came during the 3rd time Lorenz has gone before a jury over the death of Mindel. Lorenz, now 56, was convicted in 1994 of killing Mindel, but that conviction was thrown out in 2023. A retrial last year ended in a mistrial. A new DNA analysis conducted around 2019 that contributed to the overturned convictions found that none of the DNA on items from the crime scene matched Lorenz, defense attorneys said. Lorenz faces murder and burglary charges in connection with the February 17, 1993 killing of Mindel, who was strangled and stabbed in her Franklin Street home. Lorenz has been incarcerated since his arrest in August 1993, when he was 23 years old. Prosecutors contend Lorenz told 6 people about his involvement in the killing in the days, months, and years since. Co-workers and others interviewed by police in 1993 told them that Donald Mindel was not happy in his marriage. He told people he wanted a divorce and even talked about having her killed, Bentley said, police were told. There were a lot of individuals who told police that Donald Mindel made statements about wanting his wife killed, Bentley said. Donald Mindel, who was having an affair with a 17-year-old girl who worked for him, had an alibi at the time for his wife's murder. He'd been working at his job as manager for Taco Bell in the Walden Galleria. He arrived at work about 9:45 a.m. and sometime in the next few hours was fired for sexual harassment, other Taco Bell employees told investigators. Donald Mindel, who died in 2023, was the last person to leave his house that day. His daughters had left for school, and Debbie went to Sisters of Charity Hospital, where she was taking nursing classes. Police found no signs of forced entry at the Mindel home. They did find a cut screen in a kitchen window, but determined that the screen was cut from the inside of the house. Donald Mindel arrived at home about an hour after Bentley had been at the crime scene, the detective testified. He was leaning up against a car with his arms and legs crossed. He seemed very calm, Bentley said. Was he emotional? Assistant DA Gene Partridge asked. Not at all, Bentley said. Police interviewed Mindel on the day of the homicide and the following day, and during the second day he had an attorney with him. He stated he had nothing to do with the death of his wife and no idea who was responsible, Bentley told the jury of those interviews.
You know, as we're reading the front page of the local news here, Ed, it sounds like an episode of Law and Order. We've had the two police departments, and now we got the lawyers coming in here. So our next article has this headline: Lawyers plan public rally to dispute Trump claims about elections and court system. Many local attorneys are upset about President Trump's attacks on lawyers, judges, immigrants, affirmative action, and America's electoral system. A group of Western New York attorneys have organized a public rally that they are calling Stand Up for Justice, Lawyers Defending Democracy. The event will be held at 3 p.m. on May 1st in Niagara Square. Rally organizers said speakers will address a wide range of issues, including immigration enforcement, free press, elections, political interference with the Justice Department, threats against judges, and the dismantling of government protections against discrimination. The feeling among many attorneys in our community is that there are very serious threats against our democracy, and we need to stand up and speak against those threats, said Denise E. O'Connell, a former U.S. attorney who is one of the organizers of the rally. She said one of the events that sparked the rally was, quote, Operation Metro Surge, end quote, the immigration enforcement action in Minneapolis that resulted in federal agents fatally shooting two demonstrators in January. Many attorneys are also upset with the president's efforts to change election procedures, his harsh criticism of judges, and the legal system and directives that he has given the Justice Department to prosecute his political enemies, O'Donnell said. We're having this rally to draw public attention to the threats that have been made, but also to the many things that have already happened, said O'Donnell, who is a Democrat. Our democracy is truly under attack. Supporters of Trump say the president is pushing for badly needed reforms in the nation's courts and election system. Organizers of the Buffalo rally are just another front group, along with the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee, the AFL-CIO, Move On, and Black Lives Matter dark money organizations that push a radical left-wing agenda that has largely been rejected by the majority of American voters, said Michael Thielen, the president of the Republican National Lawyers Association. Attorneys who will speak at the rally include O'Donnell and John Lipschutz, co-chairs of the event, John Elmore, the past president of the Minority Bar Association of Western New York, longtime defense attorneys Kevin Spittler, James Harrington, and Donald Thompson, and attorneys Nicholas Ramirez and Samantha White. Ramirez is the current president, and White is the former president of the Minority Bar Group, and Spittler is former president of the Erie County Bar Association.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 14 minutes past the hour, and it's time to talk about those Sabres. And we'll start off with Mike Harrington's column, and it says, after a 14-year drought and sleepy two first periods, the Sabres get a 4-goal wake-up call to bruise the Bruins in the playoff opener. He writes, "Dogs have to be dogs." That's how Rasmus Dahlin explained what in the world we saw late Sunday night in the KeyBank Center. The Buffalo Sabres found plenty of bite just in time. What looked like a crushingly disappointing shutout loss in the game the organization and fan base had waited 15 years to see suddenly turned into one that will live forever in the history of the franchise. 2 beast-like goals by Tage Thompson, the winner by Matthias Samuelsson, the empty netter by Alex Tuch, 4 goals in the last 7 minutes and 58 seconds to turn a 2-goal deficit into a 4-3 win over the shell-shocked Boston Bruins. It's the first game, it's only 1 win, but it feels like a lot more. How big was Thompson's bark in this one? We want to go into games being the guys who are going to make the difference, Thompson explained. Every guy in the NHL, especially on our team, is a guy who wants to go over the boards and make an impact every time they touch the ice. If you don't, then you probably shouldn't be playing this sport. It's something we really like to tell each other and see who can be a game changer. As Dahlin put it, Thompson showed up and led the team. That was special. We're going to need him more. The clock ticked past 8 minutes left and the Bruins were still ahead 2-0 when Elias Lindholm scored just 68 seconds into the third period. It felt like the Sabres were toast and not a whole lot seemed to be going on. But after what we've been seeing the last 4 months, shame on all of us for doubting them. Thompson robbed Jeremy Swayman with a wraparound goal coming out from Swayman's left when the goalie was looking right. It broke the dam. Thompson scored again. Jack Quinn made a super pass to set up Samuelsson's winner. When the Sabres got it to 2-2, you just felt they weren't settling for overtime. They were on their toes. The Bruins were on their heels, and the frothing, full-throated crowd was thirsting for more than just what was in their beers. The citizenry was as good as we expected it to be. Dahlin said he couldn't hear anything on the bench. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen said that when Samuelsson scored, it was the loudest building he had ever heard. Lindy Ruff said the place was shaking much the way it did when the Sabres were beating Philadelphia and Carolina in 2006. I can report firsthand all that to be true, especially the last part. There's no question my chair in the press box was moving and vibrating from the noise. I've sat in that exact spot since 2007 and have never felt anything like that. The atmosphere was unbelievable, Ruff said. It was great to give our fans that third period. According to OptaStats, the Sabres became the first team in NHL postseason history to win in regulation when facing a multiple-goal shutout deficit in the final 8 minutes. Obviously, that's a mouthful, but it shows how epic and how shocking this comeback was. Ruff said he thought the Sabres kept pushing and their physicality mattered. They had 53 hits in the series opener, and the Bruins had 38. Boston coach Marco Sturm, better responder to which team is more physical. Samuelsson had 9 hits, and Ruff called him an absolute stud in the game. Alex Tuch had 10 and won a huge battle down low to set up Thompson's second goal. In the Bruins locker room following the morning skate, old friend Casey Mittelstadt nailed his prediction of what the scene would be like. I'm expecting pretty much bedlam. I wouldn't expect anything else, he said. I've been to plenty of Bills games, guessing it's going to be a little bit like that. So yeah, it'll be a blast. I'm excited to get to experience it. Fan signs featured on the Jumbotron included, "We're back, deal with it, America," a slogan Buffalo originally made famous during the 1990s during the Bills' Super Bowl runs. The fans sang along with the team's Better Days video that played as part of the pregame show. The late legendary voice Rick Jeanneret got plenty of attention with signs that read, "Do it for RJ and RJ's house." The Sabres unveiled his framed sweater outside the broadcast booth, and Sandra "Cupcake" Jeanneret was the pregame drum banger in answer to a question that had been all over social media networks. "We've been in situations when we've been behind in games and found our way," Thompson said. "When you do that, you get confidence." Sure did. It all changed so suddenly. amazing.
Now we get news reporter Rachel Lindsay's view of the game, and her headline is, "On a night of first, this team still refuses to lose." The Buffalo Sabres notched plenty of firsts yesterday. The first Stanley Cup playoff game for this group collectively. The first playoff goal for the Sabres, Tage Thompson's tally at 12:02 of the third period. The first playoff deficit. They were down by 2 goals before Thompson scored his first goal of the postseason. The first sense of elation that came with a combat. The first push to hold off a feisty opponent who was going to fight to the very final seconds. The Sabres ultimately notched their biggest first for this year's team, a 4-3 win against the Boston Bruins in Game 1 of a best-of-7 first-round series yesterday at the KeyBank Center. Thompson scored 2 goals in the third period, and Alex Tuch's empty net goal at 18:48 of the third became the winner after David Pastrnak cut the lead to 1 in the final 10 seconds. But it wasn't the first time this team refused to lose. Hardly. The Sabres have done it before, many times this season, and they did it Sunday night after they went down 2-0 less than 2 minutes into the third period with the Bruins. Refuse to lose has become the rallying cry of the 2025-26 Sabres. We've been in situations where we've been behind in games, and we found our way, Thompson said. When you do that, you have confidence. And when you're in similar situations, you know you can do it again. The win yet again reminded Sabres coach Lindy Ruff something he has known about this team all season. This team doesn't quit, Ruff said. They don't give up. Let's just go back to the Tampa game on March 8th, where Tampa built a late lead, and we just came back in that game. Tonight we just said, if we get one, I feel we'll get the second one. The energy on the bench, the energy in the building after we got that first one, it just felt like we're going to get one. We're going to have a good look at the next one. They got a taste of playoff-style hockey in one of the more spirited contests of the year, an 8-7 win in favor of the Sabres. They're going to get more and more of it served to them as the postseason progresses. Now the Sabres have to sustain that confidence and continue to build the momentum that they created in their first playoff game since April 26, 2011. We learned a lot just about the highs and lows in games and in a series, said defenseman Matthias Samuelsson. That was a good learning lesson for us tonight. Take that into Game 2. There's going to be times you're down. Guys are going to make mistakes. It's just about stepping up when you need to and making the right play when you can. There's going to be things that happen throughout the series, and I think we learned a lot of that tonight. But the belief in the group never wavers. Samuelsson scored a goal with less than 4 minutes left in the third period. Tage Thompson also scored a pair of third-period goals to help the Sabres earn their first playoff win since April 22nd, 2011, which was a 4-3 overtime win against Philadelphia. Morgan Geekie gave the Bruins a 1-0 lead at 10:52 of the first, and Elias Lindstrom gave the Bruins a 2-0 lead at 1:08 of the third. Thompson, though, cut the lead to 2-1 and broke up Jeremy Swayman's shutout bid when he beat the Bruins goalie on a wraparound shot with 7:58 left in the third period. Then, Thompson scored his second goal to tie the score at 2-2 at 15:44. And Samuelsson's goal at 16:36 beat Swayman on the wrist shot through traffic from the left circle. And then Tuch's empty net goal became the game winner after Pastrnak cut the lead to 4-3 with less than 10 seconds left in regulation. I told them right after the game, you want experience? You got it now, Ruff said. If you're going to say this was my first playoff game, you have a great story to tell.
Well, while all of our eyes are on the Sabres and cheering them on, there's still Bills news with the NFL draft coming up here soon. And the headline here is that the Bills are unlikely to use a first rounder on the cornerback position. With depth needed at the position, they may grab one with a later pick. The Bills likely feel good about their two projected starters at cornerback. In Christian Benford and Maxwell Hairston, new defensive coordinator Jim Leonhard has what should be a quality starting duo. Hairston, of course, has to prove that he can stay healthy after a rocky rookie season in that regard. Nevertheless, the team's 2025 first-round draft pick played well when he was on the field, so it's reasonable to be encouraged about what he can do in his second season. Benford, meanwhile, is a quiet leader for the Bills' defense who has been a steal as a former sixth-round draft pick. Together, their presence makes it unlikely that the Bills would invest a first-round pick in a player at the position. This year's cornerback class can best be described as good but not great. In each of the past two seasons, there have been 3 cornerbacks drafted in the first round, and there's a good chance that that number will be matched later this week. It's worth noting that this might be the fastest cornerback group from top to bottom that we've ever seen, said NFL.com draft analyst Lance Zierlein. The overall position rank is 6 out of 10. The Bills' view is that this is an absolute necessity for the Bills at position. Veteran Tre'Davious White, who played well in his reunion with the team last year, remains unsigned. Dorian Strong, a 6th-round draft pick in 2025, who showed promise, faces an uncertain future after a neck injury that has left his playing career in limbo. The Bills will absolutely add at least one more outside cornerback to the roster, though it remains to be seen whether that comes through the draft or veteran free agency. The depth at corner is lacking, but there are some very talented nickelbacks who will step into starting roles fairly quickly, Zierlein wrote. The Bills don't have a need at nickel cornerback after signing Dee Alford in free agency from the Falcons.
In Major League Baseball, a major article here deals with Emerson finds niche with the Marlins as the pitcher moves from a sometime backup to a regular starter. There are various angles to Emerson Hancock's transformation as a steadying force in the Mariners' starting rotation. The actual physical angle of his right arm is an important one, and maybe the most obvious. No right-handed starting pitcher in Major League Baseball releases the baseball at a lower arm slot than Hancock. The change has been drastic and effective. Less obvious is another type of release, a hard-earned emotional freedom that helps illuminate his sudden success and could perhaps serve as a forecast for what is next. Mentally, Hancock acknowledged, "I've gotten in a lot better space." Everything is better for Hancock these days, from his mindset to the mound, to the stuff coming out of his hand, to his home life as a new father. One lesson Hancock has learned is there's only so much he can control. He can prepare as much as possible and execute to the best of his ability. But once he releases a pitch, he knows there's nothing else he can do. He found comfort and freedom in accepting that. In some brief news from around the league, from the Angels, Los Angeles activated Jorge Soler from the suspended list on Sunday and put him in the cleanup spot against San Diego. He had been suspended for an on-field fight with Atlanta's Reynaldo Lopez on April 7th. From the Astros, Houston placed outfielder Joey Loperfido on the injured list with a right quad strain on Sunday and recalled Jaden Murray from AAA Sugarland. The Astros traded minor league right-hander Wilmy Sanchez to the Yankees for infielder Braden Shoemake. From the Dodgers, Los Angeles placed first baseman Freddie Freeman on the paternity list and called up outfielder Ryan Ward to the major leagues. The Marlins, Miami outfielder Kyle Stowers was activated from the injured list to make his season debut against Milwaukee yesterday. And from the Diamondbacks, Arizona outfielder Corbin Carroll exited Sunday's game due to lower back tightness. He is expected to be available for the team's next game tomorrow. And the stat of the day is 14. The Diamondbacks' Ildemaro Vargas singled off the Blue Jays' Jeff Hoffman on Saturday to open the 8th, extending his season-opening hitting streak to a franchise record 14 games.
So let's see, he needs another 42 to catch up with Joe DiMaggio, I think.
He's knocking on the door.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 30 minutes past the hour. And now it's time to ask Eric. And today's first letter is headlined, Mom Worries Inheritance Will Divide Her Daughters. Dear Eric, I have 2 daughters, Tracy, who has 2 adult children, and Mary, who has 3 adult children. Tracy is financially comfortable and has been retired for several years. Mary is doing okay but still has to work. They are 3 years apart and Mary is younger. Mary is a devoted daughter who has been there for me after a cancer surgery, taking off from work to help me after the surgery. She calls me every few days and will be there if I need her. Tracy told me years ago that she could never take care of me if I needed help. She calls me on holidays and my birthday, sometimes leaves a message if I'm not home saying she'll call back, and she never does. In the past, she was not pleasant if I called when she was watching a show on TV or something like that, so I hesitate to call her. I wish to leave Mary most of any inheritance and Tracy just a token amount. I'm leaving equal amounts to each grandchild because I feel their relationship with me was formed by the example of their parents. I love both of my daughters and all of my grandchildren. Tracy has emotionally hurt me for so many years. My concern is that this unequal distribution of inheritance would drive my daughters even further apart. I keep hoping Tracy will change and become a loving daughter and sister. Will it do the opposite? Signed, a mom who wishes for unity. And Eric writes, Dear Mom, it's very likely that an unequal distribution will cause friction between the sisters. At the very least, it is unlikely to bring them closer. This is not an argument against your plan per se, but it's important that you go into this clear-eyed. When I get inheritance questions, I often write that money talks, but it mumbles. So we have to be clear with what our intentions are. If you want Tracy to be a better sister to Mary and a better daughter to you, you can and should ask for that in specific ways. For instance, I want to have a closer relationship with you before it's too late. Can we commit to a weekly phone call? Mary is free to do the same thing. However, unfortunately, what's best for both of your adult children is for you to let them navigate their relationship on their own instead of trying to influence it. Lastly, you may want to talk to a financial advisor about ways of distributing some money now, especially if it can make a meaningful difference in Mary's life and make it easier for her and you to enjoy your time together. Dear Eric, a 70-year-old woman wrote it to you about being addressed as honey or sweetie. I know there are parts of the country where everybody is hun, but I think you missed this woman's point. One of the most disturbing and painful things about growing older, and especially if you're a woman, is that older adults are often marginalized and treated as though we are children or childlike, no longer functioning members of the adult community. Calling an older woman sweetie can be intended as friendliness, but whatever the intent, it can be experienced as a microaggression and marginalization. Thanks for all the advice you provide. I hope you'll extend more of that kindness and understanding to the letter writer's experience. Signed, Respect. Dear Respect, you're absolutely right, and I appreciate you and the letter writer below for your pointing out this blind spot. So, dear Eric, I enjoy your column and thoughtful answers. It's impossible to get the tone right every time, so I hope it's okay to comment on your answer to Not Honey, a 70-year-old woman being addressed as Honey and Sweetie. You meant well, but beginning with a comment that it could be regional or a cultural phenomenon was implicitly dismissive, and nothing in your reply seems to recognize that this is a common, patronizingly ageist way of addressing people. It treats older people as if they're children, incapable of fully understanding, and in parentheses, applying the same infantilizing tone and diminutives used to sometimes address small children, close quote. Sometimes it comes from an assumption that because they're old, they must be cognitively impaired. It's quite belittling, and yes, any one person who does it might not be encountered often, but the older person may encounter it multiple times from different people in the same week. Signed, No Ageism. Dear No Ageism, thank you for your letter. I certainly didn't mean to come off as dismissive. My hope in publishing your letter is that it gives readers another perspective to consider in their own interactions. It's always helpful to learn more about other people's contexts so that intention and impact can be more aligned.
Our next story is about a local historical landmark. The headline is Botanical Gardens' $31 million expansion and renovation is more than halfway complete. The Buffalo and Erie County Botanical Gardens' $31 million expansion and renovation project that will include a new welcome center, classrooms, and visitor amenities is now more than halfway complete. About 10 months into the project, the first and second stories of the new building have been installed, and it is expected to open early next year. Meanwhile, the remodel of the Grow Range building located behind the conservatory has been completed, and is now connected to the new building and the conservancy. The Botanical Gardens broke ground on the campus-wide project on June 20th. There is now just less than 8 months remaining in the construction phase, organization leaders said. Overall, the new campus includes 16,000 square feet of new construction, 14,000 square feet of renovated construction, and more than 90,000 square feet of renovated and new outdoor gardens filled with new trees, shrubs, and perennials for a complete indoor-outdoor experience. We see it as another connection to the community, said Aaron Gryjek, the CEO and president of the Botanical Gardens. It's built sustainably. It's carbon neutral. It's a connection where people can come and utilize all of the facilities. The project has features and spaces designed for sustainability by Wendell Companies, the lead architectural firm. It will enhance comfort and functionality for students and guests, and upgrade from the current spaces that present limitations and challenges, organization officials said. Other significant parts of the project include all gender and family-focused restrooms, a wellness room, visitor lockers, and a large events center. The Welcome Center will include a new entrance and admission center and a larger gift shop. Spaces will be created for events, for kids' camps, and for educational classes. We spent lots of time gathering information about what the community wanted from this project, and they wanted more classroom spaces, more spaces for events, and visitor amenities. And we've accomplished all those things, Gryjek said. The project focuses on 4 key design principles based on efficiency of energy, water, materials, and equity. Energy reduction methods will include use of skylights and glass window walls to reduce lighting loads, solar panels to offset 10% of the building's total energy consumption, ground source heat pumps, and earth sheltering design. Water usage will also be reduced through a retention pond and bioswales to manage stormwater and create natural habitats for wildlife. Smart irrigation systems should reduce outdoor water use by 69%, while efficient fixtures and plumbing design can reduce indoor water use by 42%. By integrating green technologies such as water power and advanced stormwater management, they are not only reducing their environmental footprint, but also driving significant economic growth, creating new jobs, attracting regional tourism, and providing the modern facilities that are needed to expand the botanical gardens.
Well, I'll say that Chick-fil-A makes a pretty good chicken sandwich, but the next story here tells how it can also be perhaps influential in getting being successful in the H-1B lottery to work in the United States. The headline here is Clucking for Visa Luck. Chick-fil-A factors into the H-1B lottery hopes in the Chinese student community. On a recent weekend afternoon at a Chinese comedy show in Northern Virginia, the host asked the audience, "What food do you like?" The loudest answer echoed through the hall, "Chick-fil-A." "You still haven't gotten your H-1B lottery, ha," quipped the host, citing the most popular work visa among Chinese students. It's an easy-to-get joke in the Chinese student community where those eager for U.S. visas believe their chances of success might hinge on something unexpected, an American chicken sandwich, and the company behind it. Chick-fil-A has no branches in China, but the brand entices Chinese students in the U.S. for a simple reason. Chick-fil-A sounds like check files. In a culture that puts great stock in sound-alike words and numbers, it is believed to bring good luck to those with complicated visa applications. It feels like I am one step closer to the green card after having a Chick-fil-A meal, says Zhu Liu, an AI software engineer in his late 30s who lives in Wilmington, Delaware. Since arriving in the United States as a student 14 years ago, Zhu's visa status has been a roller coaster experience. He was repeatedly asked to add paperwork while switching among 4 types of visas, one of which was approved days ahead of its expiration. That was when Zhu turned to the popular poultry purveyor. No one can say who originally had the idea, but it was kicking around Chinese student community for years, especially for visa applications such as the H-1B, which is based on a lottery system and is harder to secure. Some 3D print the Chick-fil-A logo on coasters. Some embroider the logo in a small cross-stitch pendant for keychains. Others set Chick-fil-A's logo as their profile picture on social media, sometimes converting it from red to green as in green card. Chick-fil-A didn't respond to emails seeking comment. The Chick-fil-A superstition reflects how difficult it is for immigrants to overcome obstacles to work legally in the U.S., even for those with prestigious educational backgrounds and high-level job titles. More than 46,000 Chinese students and workers were approved for H-1B visas in 2024. Approved Chinese applicants account for almost 12%, the second largest group by country after India's 70%. Fan Wu, a data scientist living in Indianapolis, didn't win his H-1B lottery despite changing his social media profile picture to the fast food chain's red logo and traveling to Hawaii to pray at a Japanese Taoist temple. "I was forced to turn to these mysteries," he says. "The lottery itself is a matter of chance. It depends on luck, and we need another mystery to echo it." It goes beyond chicken. The need for better fortune in visa lotteries has given rise to a new profession, agents who pray in temples across the Pacific on behalf of others. When students reach out to 24-year-old Meng Yanqing in Beijing across the world through the social media platforms, Meng lies up to enter and pray at the popular Lama Temple, holding a paper between his palms that expresses the wish for an H-1B visa. That involves, quote, precise positioning, unquote, with their personal information such as the passport number and birthdays. I respect them. They have their demands and I offer the service, says Meng, who also helps his clients buy consecrated bracelets from the temple and sends them across the Pacific to the U.S. I truly hope the best for them.
Well, Ed, as we do today's version of Animal Farm, we go from the chicken coop to the pig pen. As our next article says, the headline, that's some pig. You don't see a pig on a leash every day with a hat on, Mina Alali said of her pot-bellied pig wearing a colorful propeller hat tugged at her shirt, hoping to receive a handful of oats. The propeller hat is a signature look for the pig, a 4-year-old Vietnamese pot-bellied named Merlin, who has more than 1 million followers on Instagram. That's more than me. And surprisingly, a hefty vocabulary and a Guinness World Record. For 4 years, Al-Ali has been posting photos and videos of Merlin on Instagram. The pet pig quickly went viral with videos of him learning how to speak using buttons that, when pressed, play a recording of a word or a phrase. He now has more than 30 buttons he presses to ask for treats, to go outside, and to share his thoughts. Al-Ali said adopting the pig was one of the best decisions she ever made. Merlin not only provides companionship and allows his mom the opportunity to be self-employed through social media, but he also brought his family together. He's pretty much the best thing that's ever happened to me, Al-Ali said, next to my fiance. Al-Ali grew up in California in a half-Iranian household, notably without any non-standard pets. We had 2 dogs and a fish, she said. However, adopting a pig was a long-time dream. Growing up, Al-Ali's career inspiration had nothing to do with animals. She hoped to become a singer-songwriter. She spent time in her native Iran studying classical Persian music and taking voice lessons before attending Berklee College of Music in Boston for music business management. Al-Ali came back to the West Coast and signed with a small Sacramento-based music label. But after producing 4 albums, she made the decision to walk away. I quickly realized that I did not want to be an artist full-time, she said. I just thought that the industry itself was not morally aligned with myself. So I was in quite a crisis. Soon after, in late 2019, Al-Ali adopted her first pet as an adult, a bearded dragon named Mochi. I spent a lot of time with him. I became obsessed with him very quickly, she said. We spent all our time together, and I decided to try to train him. As the COVID-19 pandemic loomed and TikTok became a form of escape and connection, Al-Ali started posting her experience training Mochi to come to her, high five, and shake hands. One of the first videos she posted of the reptile blew up overnight, she said, earning about 5 million views. She continued posting videos of Mochi for fun and accrued nearly 1 million followers on her TikTok account with the playful reptile videos. In 2022, while working a day job as an influencer management, and an opportunity for Al-Ali to fulfill her lifelong dream of having a pig came true. It was an impromptu decision, she said. I remember coming across a TikTok video of someone with a pig, and I said, I just want one so bad. And my friend said, well, what's stopping you? Al-Ali came across baby Merlin in her search for a pet pig and instantly knew he was the one for her. He was older and bigger than some of her other pigs that were being adopted quite fast. So I was like, there for 2 days. I'll be there in 2 days to pick him up. Mochi has since died. But the legacy has begun with Al-Ali that lives on through Merlin and his other animal siblings. 4 months after adopting Merlin, Al-Ali started a dedicated Instagram page for him after he became popular in videos with Mochi. As Merlin learned how to use these pre-recorded buttons, audiences fell in love with the tiny pig's big attitude. Some of his first buttons included, "I want a kiss," and "I'm hungry," later, which Ali turned into merchandise. The small family's newest addition helped push Ali's TikTok account over the 1 million follower threshold. Nearly 4 years later, she has more than 2.5 million TikTok followers and works on her social media accounts full-time while volunteering at the Wildlife Care Association of Sacramento, an animal rehabilitation organization.
Well, I think I'm going to take that article home and read it to my cat and see if I can get her to do something useful here.
See if you can top 1 million.
Well, from Washington News again, businesses can start claiming tariff refunds. A refund system for businesses that paid tariffs, which the Supreme Court ruled President Trump imposed without the constitutional authority to do so, is scheduled to launch today. Importers and their brokers will be able to begin claiming refunds through an online portal, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, the agency that administers the system. It's the first step in a complicated process that might also eventually lead to refunds for consumers who are billed for some or all of the tariffs on products shipped to them from outside the United States. Companies must submit declarations listing the goods on which they collectively put billions of dollars towards the import taxes that the court subsequently struck down. If CBP approves a claim, it will take 60 to 90 days to issue a refund, the agency said. The government expects the process to begin issuing refunds in phases, however, focusing first on more recent tariff payments. Any number of technical factors and procedural issues could delay an importer's application, so any reimbursements businesses plan to make to customers likely would trickle down slowly. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court on February 20th found that Trump usurped Congress's tax-setting role last April when he set new import tax rates on products from almost every other country, citing the U.S. trade deficit as a national emergency that warranted his invoking of a 1977 Emergency Powers Law. Although the court majority did not address refunds in its ruling, a judge at the U.S. Court of International Trade determined last month that companies subject to the IEEPA tariffs were entitled to money back. Customs and Border Protection said in court filings that over 330,000 importers paid a total of about $166 billion on over 53 million shipments. Not all of those orders qualify for the first phase of the refund system's rollout, which is limited to cases in which tariffs were estimated but not finalized or within 80 days of final accounting. To receive refunds, importers have to register for the CBP's electronic payment system. As of April 14th, 56,497 importers had completed registration and were eligible for refunds totaling $127 billion, including interest, the agency said. Megan Cipano, a partner at Ice Miller, said the law firm has advised clients to carefully list in their declarations all of the document numbers or forms that went to CBP to describe the imported goods and their value. If there's an entry on that file that does not qualify, it may cause the entire entry to be rejected, or that line item might be rejected by Customs, she said. Small businesses have awaited the chance to apply for refunds. Brad Jackson, co-founder of After Action Cigars in Rochester, Minnesota, said he started compiling records and preparing to enter information into the system the minute CBP announced the launch date. The company imports cigars and accessories from Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic. Last year it paid $34,000 in tariffs and absorbed much of the cost instead of raising customer prices, Jackson said.
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, April 20th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call us at 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ed Howard
and Ted Pajacki. We thank you for listening. Have a great week and go Sabres!
Go Sabres!
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Radio Reading mails out a large print program schedule to our listeners every other month. If you have not received a Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service large print program schedule in the mail, please call us at 716-821-5555. We will make sure that you receive one every other month. A Braille version of the schedule is also available upon request. Our number again is 716-821-5555. Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have the New York Times Magazine. Following that at noon is the USA Today. Stay with us for these readings and more. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which makes